I'm having company. Who's that knocking at my door?
Hello and welcome to the video edition of the Business Podcast. This is the first episode, and I am your host, Brandon Safford, certified business broker and Six Sigma Black Belt. Today's topic will be over business brokers. I get asked all the time, what is a business broker? What do they do? How do they get paid? Why do you even care about them or need them? I'm going to attempt to answer all these questions today. There's a term in businesses called the elevator speech. You need to be able to explain what you do in 30 seconds or less, the time it would take for an elevator to go up a couple of floors and the doors to open. And this is supposed to convey what you do to the person. This is great if you really don't care whether they grasp the complexity of it or not. For instance, I am a business broker. I help people to buy and sell businesses for the best possible market price. Really sounds simple, doesn't it? If I were to immediately equate it to what people jump to, they say, oh, you're like a real estate broker or a real estate agent. Yeah, you sell businesses. Except what they're thinking is not what I do. What they're thinking is commercial real estate. Now, like a house, commercial real estate deals a lot more with things like location, nearby traffic, crime rate, comparables to the structure itself. If you're pricing a home in a type A neighborhood, then around that same neighborhood you want to find homes that have roughly the same number of square feet, bedrooms, bathrooms, lot size, and boom, you've got a comparable price right there. Commercial real estate, very similar thing, except it deals with businesses. Commercial real estate. A business broker cares a lot more about what the humans above their dirt are doing than the dirt itself. So then, what does a business broker do? Well, a business broker helps you buy and sell businesses in the same way that an accountant does your taxes or a lawyer represents you in court. Well, sure, it's, again, very easy to say, but it leaves absolutely no room for understanding the depth of complexity that is involved and the scale of what can go wrong should you get a critical fumble on your attempt to handle it yourself. You can FSBO a house with minimal fuss. If you do a for sale by owner on a house, well, for one thing, you want people to know that your house is for sale. Otherwise, they're not going to buy it. If you get drive-by traffic looking at your house for sale, all the better. People can find it on Google Maps and be able to look at it. The more information, the more good information that they can get about your house, the better. With a business, you want certain people to know it's for sale, but only if they agree to keep it a secret, and you sure don't want everyone knowing it's for sale. Because if someone finds out your business is for sale, one of three things is going to likely happen. If they're a customer, they're going to find somewhere else to start shopping. If they know that you're not going to be there, possibly tomorrow or next month or a year from there, do you really think they're going to make long-term plans to enroll their student in whatever service that you're offering, tutoring or daycare or something like that, cooking classes? If they are buying things at your store, then they're going to find somewhere else that caters to them. If you're a restaurant, they're going to be real sad about it, and they're really going to start telling people, especially in a state like Texas where we really like our food. So if you're a restaurant owner and you decide that you want to put your business up for sale, do not put a for sale sign in the window, for the love of God. At the very least, just contact a broker, a business broker, and ask what you can do on your own if you absolutely refuse to hire one. Now, that said, business broker. What is a business broker? What do we do if we don't just do that? Well, for starters, we determine, I say we. There are good brokers, there are bad brokers, and there are people who don't even belong in the same general language as the word broker. Be sure to vet the broker that you get. Maybe find a reference, or at the very least, make sure they're wearing a cowboy hat and a bolo. A good business broker, worth his salt, right off the bat, should be honest with you about whether your business is saleable. There are a lot of inquiries about selling businesses that never make it past the first contact. Now, it could be something as obvious as you don't own the business. That might seem like a fair first step, but you'd be surprised at the number of people who don't realize you can't sell a business that isn't yours, even if it is your parents, or your child's, or your spouse's, or your best friend. If you're not the owner, you can't sell the business. If the business is not generating any revenue, you cannot sell the business. You can sell the idea, maybe. Now, this was especially popular in the .com era. It's also very popular among patent trolls. But if you are a Main Street business investor, and you're looking for a Main Street business to invest in, or you're looking for a small manufacturing business to invest in, or anything where you can walk in and immediately start getting money, you're not going to buy a zero revenue business. You're not going to buy one that's close to zero revenue. There's just no profit in it. When someone buys a business, they're not buying your life dream. They're not buying your retirement plan. They're not buying the idea of your company. They're buying assets, and they're buying a revenue stream. And the majority is on the latter. If they don't have a revenue stream coming in from the business from day one, it's not really sellable, except in very rare circumstances. Depending on the situation, you may have a federal or state tax debt, or a bank debt, or some other sort of debt that you can't pay off even upon the closing of the business. There could be very specific compliance issues that would prevent you from selling a business. So for instance, if you were a healthcare provider, you're going to need to know everything about Health and Human Services requirements for transitions, and those are going to be distinct per state. In some cases, maybe you have to apply to have permission from the state to sell your business months in advance of the sale, and have it be approved, not just applied for. So there can be a number of obvious and not obvious reasons why you can't sell your business. We're going to graduate that step now. Let's assume that your broker's already determined that you can, in fact, sell the company. The next thing on the list is they need to figure out the value of the company. Valuation of the company is not the same as what you feel you deserve, or what would be fair, or especially when I hear a lot, what will pay for your retirement. The value of a company is largely determined by the performance of the last 4 years, or 3 years, or however many years that you've been in business, less than 4. What matters most of all is the revenue. Because if you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. You have a very expensive hobby. Now let's go over EBITDA and EBIT. EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, can also play an important role. You might be able to think of it in similar terms to being your net profit. It's not exactly the same thing, but close enough for government work. Another item that can figure into the value of your company is your seller's discretionary income. That is to say, your EBITDA with adjustments and add-backs. Beyond that, there are industry multiples that get applied as well. Assets play an important role in valuation of a company, but not in the same way that you necessarily think. Big mistake by owners is believing that their assets add significantly to the value of the company when they don't necessarily. See, when someone buys your company, it's assumed that they're buying the assets and that those assets were necessary to generating the revenue in the first place. So what they're doing is just taking on the machine that allows you to produce your revenue. They're not buying your revenue plus the machine. Another contributing factor to the value of your company is comparables. Now, there may not necessarily be a comparable specific to your business, but there usually is. And so a good business broker is going to have access to something like peer comps, where they can go up and they can look at all SBA approved loans for business purchases and find out the revenue, the EBITDA, and the seller's discretionary earnings, and then what the sale price of the business was as a result. So that's how you end up with a lot of multiples for specific industries. You may have a pizza place, and that pizza place may, by every other value set, show as being worth $1 million. But the comparables that are out there for other pizza places similar to yours that have sold by SBA approved loans might show that the reality is, sure, your business might be worth $1 million, but banks are only going to approve $750,000 for it. Or it could be the reverse. Yeah, your business is technically valued at $1 million, but it turns out it's such a hot industry right now that people are paying 1.5 times the 1.5 million instead of $1 million. So comparables also play a very important role. Now, I will usually offer my clients a business value, which is to say, technically what the Kelley Blue Book equivalent has determined that the business should be worth. And then I have the comparable price, that is to say, the price that it is most likely to sell at. And then I also come up with the asking price as a result. So in most cases, the highest number is going to be the raw business value. If you were to look at your car on Kelley Blue Book and see it was $20,000 according to the Kelley Blue Book, oh wow, so I can sell it for 20,000, right? No, not if everyone's paying 15,000 for it instead. So your most probable sale price is going to be 15,000 in that case. Your asking price, however, should probably be somewhere between those two. In this case, I would say if Kelley Blue Book says that your car is worth 20,000 and people are actually paying 15,000 for it, maybe try pricing it for 19,999. An experienced business owner or a first-time business owner who has a broker to assist them is going to know the value of the business, and they will know absolutely if too much is being asked for it. If you've got a good business broker who has suggested a price to list your business for, ask them why, ask them what their justification was, ask them what the most probable sale price is versus what you plan to list it as, and never ever list at an even number. When you go into a store and you're buying something, you don't see a price tag that says $35. No, you see $35.99. You don't see $100 for this thing. No, it's $99.97. There is a psychology behind those asinine, longer, more complicated prices that in the end save you a penny or 3 pennies or however much. And it's because part of your brain doesn't care. It just sees a lower amount and it wants it. It doesn't see $100. It sees $99, which is way cheaper. No, it's not way cheaper, but you can't expect your brain to fully appreciate that. Your filters may be looking only for businesses under $5 million. They may be looking for businesses only under $500,000. Well, in either one of those cases, if you're selling your business for $500,000, the one that says under $500,000 isn't going to see it, but it'll see the one that's priced $499,000.99. But don't include the cents, that's just tacky. The next step is to market that business. But you have to do so in a way that doesn't tell everyone it's for sale. You need to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt the business operations of the company that you're trying to sell. So, how do you go about doing that? Well, again, if you're a good broker, you're going to be creating something called a CBOR, a Comprehensive Business Opportunity Report, or sometimes it's called a Confidential Business Opportunity Report. What it is an information packet that tells you, the potential buyer, everything that you would likely need to know to make a decision if you have any interest in talking to the owners to find out more. There's any number of things that will be put in there to answer as many anticipated questions as you can to require the least amount of interruption. The CBOR alone isn't enough. Prior to someone even receiving the CBOR, there needs to be protection. This typically involves a non-disclosure agreement between the buyer and the broker, where the buyer agrees that they will not use the information to harm the other company, and that they will not relay any information of the company to anyone who does not have an immediate stake in the purchase of that company. So by now, hopefully I've managed to convey that a business broker acts as a gatekeeper to the seller. You're a gatekeeper to prevent their operations from getting interrupted. You're a gatekeeper to prevent their information from getting into the wrong hands. You're a gatekeeper as much as a salesman, in that you also want to keep people interested in the business. Once the buyer is ready to talk to the sellers, it is your job as a business broker to facilitate that and to represent your party. So if you're representing the seller's party, you're there on the call. You don't give them each other's numbers. You have them dial into a teleconference and you try to answer most of the questions that you can on behalf of the person who's selling, if you're representing them, or the buyer if they're buying, a hype man or a hype woman as well. Now, when they tour the site, you need to make sure that it's done discreetly. Either do it in off business hours, or when you and the buyer show up, don't be wearing three-piece suits when it's an auto mechanic place. Show up looking like everyone else, or even better yet, look like a customer. Look like a friend of the owner. Look like an insurance adjuster. Look like anything except a buyer or a broker, because if the customers realize that the place is for sale, that will be very damaging to the company. If the employees suspect the company is for sale, that can be very damaging as well, especially if the seller has not talked to them yet. And it's usually a good idea that they don't, except for maybe the critical staff, your operations manager, your general manager, whoever is going to be essential in helping along the process of the transfer of ownership from seller to the buyer. But the number of people who need to be in the know should be very few, and should definitely not include the regular crew until the day of the sale. Why? Because they will look for other jobs. They will panic about how the new owner will treat them. They will be indignant that they didn't get offered the company. You know, well, I've worked here for 20 years. How come I can't just take over the company? Well, Chad, because you don't have $500,000 to give the owner of the company. Moving onward. Everything's golden. Buyer and seller agree, and they've decided on a price even. So next will probably either come a letter of intent, or even possibly straight up purchase agreement. The letter of intent is usually, well, it can vary in complexity. It could be as complicated as you want it to be, or it could be as simple as a bullet point in an email. It could be even simpler than that, but it's probably going to be about a page worth of bullet points. They should be in the spirit of the agreement. Now, depending on how complicated the transaction is going to be, depending on how big the business is and how much is at risk and how complicated the transaction is going to be, because different buyers are going to have different ways of funding their purchase. You may or may not want to have a business transaction attorney involved at the letter of intent phase, the LOI phase. Most businesses that are small and simple can get by with an agreed upon set of bullet points in an email. Where you do absolutely want to get a business transaction attorney involved is when you get to the purchase agreement, because that is going to spell out all the P's and Q's. It's going to dot all the I's, cross all the T's on what is and isn't expected, allowed, and forbidden by both the buyer and the seller. If you're a good broker, you will have recommended that they have a business transaction attorney. And if they had a good business transaction attorney, then that will be hashed out ahead of time. The conditions under which the business succeeds or fails, and who would be responsible for it, will generally be in the purchase agreement. So, you got all the pre-closing stuff done. Now it's time for the closing. All right. You can get as casual or fancy with it as you like. Sometimes buyer and seller won't even be in the same state. They will have they might not even talk to each other. They may have their person wire over the funds. They might sign the documents and have those sent over. Seller does the same thing. Boom, it's done. Walk away. You got the new keys to your shiny new business. Don't sink it, Chad. Maybe you got some old school business people who want a bit more of a personal touch. A nice fancy dinner at Fogo de Chao, or maybe a casual group breakfast at a Greasy Spoon, or maybe a fun little office outing to some place like Topgolf or bowling alley of some sort. Generally, though, as the broker, it is traditional to have a gift for both the buyer and the seller. Nothing too terribly fancy. We're not talking about Oscar level swag bags, but as a general rule, the more expensive the business and the more commission that you made off of the sale, the better the gift needs to be. Don't be seen as cheap at the end of it, but don't blow the bank either. So, you make sure that the signing goes through. The signing went through. Great. Wonderful. Job's over, right? No. In some ways, the job has just begun, because now you need to make sure these people who are happy as of signing stay happy. You want to check in on the buyer every now and then. Make sure things are going okay, even if it's just a simple, hey, how's it doing? Has it still got that new company smell? Did everything work out okay? Was Bob able to get you shown the ropes and stuff? With the seller, hey, how are you getting on? How's retirement treating you? Or how's the new business that you went into? Your seller, maybe they're retiring, but you might also have sold a business from someone who's a serial entrepreneur. Maybe now that they have the money from the first business that they sold, they're going to use that money as seed money for a whole new company. See how they're doing with that company. Give them advice on how to build the value of that company as well. Stay in touch with them. There's every chance that if they were satisfied with the work that you did for them on selling their first business, that they may very well hire you to handle the sale of their second business, or their third, or their fourth. There's things that you are going to know that really translate into what someone is going to pay for their business versus what they just think their business should be worth. And the sooner that they can implement that, the better. The best time to plan your exit strategy is the day you open your doors for business. The second best time is now.